the first external treatment that is usually used in the industry is the sedimentation. So sedimentation is used to separate usually quite a large molecule that's non-dissolved in the water. So the water that is out of the sedimentation has better quality and better turbidity. So usually it is used to precipitate non-colloidal particles with the help of gravitational force. I think you already got some of the materials about sedimentation in the fluid mechanics courses, yeah. So in sedimentation, of course, several aspects will affect the separation performance. The most important one is the density of the particles. Yeah, so for example, if you look at the figure here, we have two particles here, and then the size is quite the same, and the shape is quite the same as well, but the density is different. The particle below here, the density is higher than the one up there. Okay, so when they enter the sedimentation tank, the particle with higher density will settle faster than the one that has lower density. The density is directly related to the terminal velocity of the particles. Yes, so if the particle has higher density, then its terminal velocity higher as well, and it will settle faster than those of the lower density. And the second one is the water viscosity. So water viscosity, or the fluid viscosity to be exact, the fluid viscosity is related or affecting the time required for a particle to be settled. Yes, so if the fluid viscosity is high, then the movement of the particle in the fluid is a bit difficult. Yeah, so if the fluid viscosity is high, the movement of the particle in the fluid is quite difficult, then the terminal velocity of the particle will be less, and then it will require a lot more time to be settled than if the fluid viscosity is lower. And the last one is the flow in sedimentation tank. So this is related to whether the flow is in turbulent or laminar state. If the flow is in turbulent state, of course, you know, turbulent flow, it provides agitation to the fluid. Yes, so if the flow of the fluid in the sedimentation tank is in the turbulent state, then the separation performance usually is not as good. So we better engineer the flow regime in the laminar state. Yeah, so how sedimentation works, this is just a quick recap. Basically, you have to one inlet and one outlet, so the fluid and particle to be separated enter the sedimentation tank via the inlet pathway here, and then along the way, usually sedimentation is a big and wide rectangular body, and while the fluid moves towards the outlet, the particles will be separated here because we have gravitational forces act on the particles. So this is the first type of the sedimentation tank. Please pardon, this is types of sedimentation tank. This is the rectangular sedimentation tank. So just like I said, usually we have inlet and we have outlet here, and then along the way we will have our particles separated and then deposited on the bottom of the tank. And to get rid of that deposited particle, usually we have what we call as flights like this, and this is will get rid of the scum, get rid of the sludge or the deposited particles on the bottom of the tank. Yeah, and the scum the flights will rotate like this. In this figure, it will rotate clockwisely, and then it will bring along the sludge and then collect it here. and then once the sludge is collected in this pit, it can be sucked by this line to be disposed outside of the sedimentation tank. So we will not get a build-up of particles in our sedimentation tank. This is the actual visualization of the rectangular sedimentation tank. This is the sedimentation tank, the long with the long figure, and then here we have what we call as lamella. So lamella is basically similar with this one. It has flights attached to it, and then it will remove the sludge at the bottom of the sedimentation tank. This is the circular sedimentation tank. Usually in the circular sedimentation tank, we have the fluid inlet from here, from the bottom, and then the fluid will go up and then enter the sedimentation tank. The outflow is on the outer side of the tank. Yeah, so this is the outflow. So when the fluid moves from here to here, the particle will be gravitationally separated and then deposited on the bottom of the tank, of the sedimentation tank. And when we have circular sedimentation tank, usually we have what we call as scraper arm. So this is the scraper arm, and it rotates continuously. Yeah, it rotates continuously and collect all the deposited particles down here. And then later on, the deposited particle will be collected in the sludge collecting trough and then disposed out of the sedimentation tank. On the right hand side, you can see the figure of the sedimentation tank in industry. Next, we have aeration. So aeration means that we contact the water that we are going to treat with air. Yeah. So why we want to do the contact between water and air? So because of these three things. So the contact of water and air helps separating unwanted metals such as ferrous and manganese. Yes, so the ferrous and manganese will give like a certain color to the water, and if the ferrous and manganese is reacted with oxygen, it will create like some of the insoluble compounds. So it will react to form like ferrous oxide and manganese oxide, and those compounds is insoluble in water. So when we contact the water that contains ferrous and manganese with air, the reaction will occur, and then after that we can separate the ferrous and the manganese from our water. The second aim is to remove the dissolved gas. Yeah, so usually in water there are gases as well. Even though the solubility of gas in water is not as high, but still there are gases. And what we want to separate, or what is need to be to have like our caution, is especially the corrosive gases. So you can find what is the example of the corrosive gases. I will give you one example. The corrosive gases, one of the corrosive gases is the carbon dioxide. You can find another example. So why we want to why we want to remove the corrosive gas? Because of course we want to limit the potential of corrosion in our piping and equipment, right? And this dissolved gas is, for example, the carbon dioxide, especially has low pH. Yeah, so that's low pH, so that they become corrosive. And the third one is to remove the smell, flavor, and color caused by microorganism. Yeah, as you know, because the water is not sterile, so that means there are a lot of microorganism there, and then over the time, the microorganism will do like metabolism, yeah, and then they will extract something, and those something may cause like a foul smell of flavor and color to the water. So what aeration does, when the water contact with air, the air will replace the smell, the flavor, and the color caused by the microorganism. Of course, the gas removal or the aeration should be optimized by maintaining or by optimizing the temperature of the air and the water, and the contact time of air and water, surface area contact, air volume contact with water. Yeah, if you go through the literature, you can find that there are two types of aeration. The first one is when you have droplets of water dispersed in air, and the second one is when you have like bubble, like small droplets of gas or air dissolved in a whole body of water. So please find out that two types of contact. Yeah, so that's air in water or water in air contact. Yeah, please find it in the literature, and then we'll discuss it later on. Yeah, so that will directly related to the surface contact area, air volume contact with water, and the contact time. Yeah, this is the schematic setup of the aerator. Yeah, so usually we have the water comes from above there, and then the water will go to like valve, and then sometimes in that valve they also have like atomizer, so the water will go to the aeration tank as a droplets. Yeah, and then from below here we need to blow substantial amount of air. Yeah, so why the water flows from up here to down? Because naturally water moves from up to down, okay, while the air will move upwards. Yeah, and the water that has been contacted with air will be collected uh, in the tank here, and then it will be then distributed to the plant. The third one is coagulation, flocculation, and clarification. So these three process is usually conducted in sequence and in group, means that usually we will not have flocculation, a standalone flocculation without coagulation and clarification. We will not have clarification alone without coagulation and flocculation. So usually these three processes is conducted in group. Yeah, so first we have coagulation. Basically coagulation, flocculation, and the clarification is used to separate colloidal materials that cannot be separated by sedimentation alone. Yeah, you know, because colloid, they has like a certain what is it, and after the rapid mixing in the coagulation tank, it will goes to the flocculation tank. In the flocculation tank, not like in the coagulation tank, the mixing is still occur, but then uh, the rotation will be slow. Yeah, why? Because in the flocculation tank we want the colloidal matters to form what we call as a floc. Yeah, so floc is the group of colloidal matters that that has like higher weight and can be gravitationally separated in the clarification tank. Yeah, so in the flocculation tank, the rotation of the mixer is slow to induce the formation of the floc. Okay, after that, after the flocculation, the water will go to the clarification tank. So basically the clarification tank works almost similar to the sedimentation tank. Yeah, so the clarification tank works almost similar to the sedimentation tank, and here the flux is being separated and the clarified effluent goes out and then continue to the next treatment. You can also watch the YouTube video here. This is what I already mentioned in the previous slide. Yeah, but you can look at this explanation. This is the reaction that may happen during the coagulation. Yeah, you don't need to remember this. Yeah, you don't need to remember all the reaction, but what you need to know is the chemicals that can be used as the coagulation. Yeah, as the coagulant aid. You look at these chemicals. You don't need to remember or all of this reaction. This is the figure of the clarifiers. And then we move to group B treatment. So in the group B treatment, we have filtration. Of course, I think all of you already familiar with filtration. So filtration is used to remove the suspended solid by using porous layer. Yeah, you can use sand, anthracite, carbon, or sometimes you can also use cloth. Yeah, there are several usually particularly the plate and frame filters that use cloth, but if we need to treat like a significant amount of water, usually we use the porous layer. Yeah, a pile of porous layer. Okay, so the all filter operates for a limited time. One thing to characterize whether the filter's operation time should be ended or not is by observing the pressure drop. Yeah, so the pressure drop is the difference between inlet pressure and outlet pressure. Yeah, so once the pressure drop becomes too high, that will be one clue that the filter has been clogged. And then once the filters has been clogged, we need to clean the filter. Yeah, to clean the filter, we can use backwash. So backwash mean you change the flow. Okay, so in the operation mode, for example here in the operation mode, you have your water inlet here, and then the water will go through a pile of sand and filter there, and then here you have filtered water. Yeah, outlet here. When you do backwash, you need to change the fluid flow. Means that you will need to have a lot of clean water, and then the water flows. The inlet of the waters is here, and then it goes up, and the outlet is here. Yeah, so that's what we call as backwash. And to have or to get like an efficient backwash, we need to operate the backwash at higher pressure than the operational pressure. Yeah, so that's how to do backwash. The example of the filter equipment, we have gravity filter, pressure filter, and upflow filter. You can have a look at the literature and then look at the difference between these three filters, and then also how they work. Yeah, this is the pressure filter. Looks like this. This is the upflow sand filter. Usually we have a pile of sand here. Yeah, and then we have water, and the water inlet is here. The water then will goes up across all the sands, and then the fresh water or the filtered water outlet is here. Okay, now we move to ion exchange, means that we already enter the what is it? Category C treatment. Yeah, so in category C treatment, usually we want to remove the dissolved solid. So there are several equipment that can be used. The first one is ion exchange. Yeah, ion exchange is pretty clear because just look at the name, is just exchanging ions. Yeah, so because we have two types of ions, the first one is cation and the second one is anion. We also have two types of ion exchange. Yeah, we have cation exchange resin, and then we have anion exchange resin. Yeah, so what happened in ion exchange is basically adsorption process. Yeah, so this is basically a physical chemistry process, and basically based on the adsorption mechanism. Yeah, so in the cation exchange resin, we exchange the cation. Yeah, so if our resin contains, so R is resin, H is the hydrogen, yeah, of course. So when our cation exchange resin is in contact with some salts in the water, let's say this is calcium chloride, the cation will be exchanged. So the water that has been treated with cation exchange resin will not contain calcium chloride, but instead it will contain hydrogen chloride. Yeah, so the hydrogen ions here is being exchanged with the calcium ions here. Okay, so the cation will be adsorbed by the resin, and the hydrogen is being reacted with the chloride to form hydrogen chloride. And the anion exchange resin, of course it's clear as well, we exchange the anion. So if the resin contains hydroxides and then contacted with some salts in the water, the anion will be exchanged. So now the water will contain sodium hydroxides instead of sodium sulfate. The sulfate itself will be retained by the resin. Over the time, of course, the resin will get saturated. Yeah, once the resin lost all the hydrogen or all the hydroxide ions, the resin got saturated and it needs to be regenerated. Yeah, by using acid or base, usually strong acid and strong base solution. This is the schematic. So in here we have all the cation exchange resin in the bed. Yeah, and here we have both cation and anion exchange resin in one bed. Yeah, so that can happen. You can set your ion exchange process into bed. So the first bed is for cation, and then after that the water will go to the second bed, which is the anion exchange resin. But also you can also have mixed resin in one bed. Yeah, so if you want to have mixed resin in one bed, you need to mix the cation and anion exchange resin and then put it in one bed. Yeah, so the bed is the fixed bed. Yeah, the fixed bed process. You just pour the water from up, and then it will goes down here, and during the flow it will contact it with the resin and exchange some ions. Yeah, so this is the example of the mineralization. If we want to remove the minerals in the water, first we contact the water with the cation exchange resin, and then after that with anion exchange resin. Yeah, this is the resin particle, how it looks like. It looks like this, like a small ball with the very small diameter, 400 to 600 micrometers. So the resin has diameter of less than 1 millimeters. Yeah, very small. The next one is membrane in water treatment. So membrane has been extensively used in water treatment. Yeah, the most extensive one maybe you have ever heard about ultrafiltration membrane and reverse osmosis membrane. Yeah, those are the two most used membrane in water treatment. Okay, for the ultrafiltration membrane, it usually used to substitute the coagulation filtration process. Yeah, so instead of doing coagulation, flocculation, and then clarification, we can just directly use ultrafiltration. Ultrafiltration membrane has a pores of uh, 0.01 micrometers. Yeah, it has a very small pores, so basically all component that has size bigger than 0.01 micrometer will be retained by the membrane, and those who has lower size will be passed through the membrane. Yeah. uh, Other than that, the membrane can also be used as the filtration unit. You can also use ultrafiltration, and then we can also use membrane to do the water softening. Water softening usually when we want to remove the calcium or the magnesium, we can do that by using ion exchange, but also we can do that by using membrane. Usually we can use nanofiltration membrane. Nanofiltration membrane has a quite good rejection of calcium and magnesium because it has pore size of 1 nanometers. Yeah, 1 nanometer. So basically it can reject around 70 to 90% of calcium and magnesium in water. The last one is for the demineralization. Demineralization, we can use reverse osmosis membrane. Reverse osmosis has pores even smaller than nanofiltration, and because the pores is so small, it sometimes it is can be categorized as a dense membrane because the pores is very small. Yeah, it's even less than 1 nanometers. In reverse osmosis, basically we can reach salts rejection. This one is for sodium chloride rejection of 99.5%. You know that sodium is smaller than calcium and magnesium, right? So uh, when we have 99.5% rejection for sodium, means that I can certainly say that the calcium and magnesium can be 100% rejected by RO. Yeah, but the water comes out or permeated through the RO may still contain a very small amount of sodium. Yeah, so about 0.5% of sodium can still be permeated through the RO membrane, but still this one is very good. It can remove a lot of minerals from the water. Maybe I want to add something more that you need to learn by yourself. Yeah, um, the demineralization process in the past time is not conducted by RO. Usually, it is conducted by what we called as multiple effect evaporator. Yeah, so please find out what is multiple effect evaporator. Uh, Even though the water treatment has been shifted to RO for the demineralization, but multiple effect evaporator is still being used in the world today. So please find out about multiple effect evaporator and how it works. Okay, this is the example of the membrane installment in industry. This is ultrafiltration. This is not relevant. This is reverse osmosis. Okay, you can look at YouTube video from Sydney Water. Yeah, from Sydney Water. You will they have quite a good video explaining about how the arrangement of reverse osmosis membrane, yeah, for the desalination or demineralization process. Please have a look at that. Okay, so that's the end of the external treatment. Next is the internal treatment. Yeah, so that's the end of this video. Thank you very much.